Hey everyone, it is time to wise up. I'm Paul Arthur. Today I want to tackle the issue of diminishing privacy and freedoms here in Canada. I mean, for Canadians to speak freely, that just seems to be eroding, right? So I want to jump into that. And before we do, a quick reminder to hit subscribe. Tell your friends about us as well. I always appreciate that. Our guest today joining us from Calgary, John Carpay. He's the president of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms, their website, jccf.ca. So, John, before we get started here, quick reminder or remind our viewers, I guess, of what your organization is all about.
Well, we are a nonprofit registered charity. We defend freedom in Canada. We have a team of a dozen lawyers and paralegals across Canada that take on court cases to defend Canadians when government threatens their freedom of expression, freedom of religion, conscience, association, peaceful assembly. So we are 15 years old. We have helped hundreds of Canadians over the past 15 years in defending their freedoms. We're funded by voluntary contributions from Canadians. We don't ask for or receive government funding. And we also advocate in the court of public opinion. So, for example, last week we released a report on privacy legislation and how it is being undermined by some of the new laws being passed by Parliament. So we also seek to educate Canadians about their rights and freedoms, in addition to going to court to fight governments that are violating them.
Yeah, well, I think back, look back over the last 15 years, where would we be today if we didn't have groups like yours standing up for everyday Canadians saying, hold on a second here. This is not right. We need to amend this legislation, and you have had some success. So I'm pretty glad you're doing what you're doing. So this report, Privacy Roadmap, Halting Canada's Surveillance State, and 8 Steps to Restore Privacy in Canada. Well, why don't you give us a quick reminder? I guess first of all, where are some of the, where's the privacy of Canadians being threatened at this point in Canada?
Well, it's being gradually eroded step by step. We had bills 3 years ago that gave the government some authority and control over the internet. We've had Bill C8 get passed into law, and this is the Cybersecurity Act, and it allows government officials to order private companies to set up their software and their subscriber data in a way that's easy to search, and it gives government broad access to private and personal information. So that's a terrible law that's gone through. Another bad law quite recently, Bill C-22, the Lawful Access Act. It actually caused some companies like Signal to say publicly that they will leave Canada if the bill passes, because with the Lawful Access Act in place, if it passes, these companies will no longer be able to keep their promise to their own customers to have end-to-end encrypted private communications. Another bill before Parliament right now is C-34, the Safe Social Media Act, and it would create an immensely powerful new federal body called the Digital Safety Commission, and it would have broad censorship powers over social media to order them to take down anything that the Digital Safety Commission might deem to be hateful or harmful, which all sounds wonderful, but the practical consequence is that Canadians are going to be heavily censored in what we say on social media.
And some people love big government. I'm not one of them. So let's dive into some of the stuff. You mentioned Bill C8, and so your 8 steps here. The first one you've got listed is to amend the changes that are coming under the cybersecurity bill. This gives access to subscriber information. Can you explain exactly what that means?
Yeah, and I'm happy to do it because I'm not that good with technology. So if I can explain it, it's probably at a level that people are not technologically savvy might find helpful. So these big tech companies, they keep records of who their subscribers are. They keep records of what phone calls you made, what texts you sent, where you were geographically located is something that can be pieced together quite easily.
Oh yeah,
How
we're happy
long?
with that. I don't mind the government knowing that. That's good. Yeah.
So these bills, Bill C8 and Bill C22, Bill C22 requires that companies keep this data on file for 6 months rather than just
So why?
deleting
Why?
it.
Why do they need to hang on to that for like half a year?
In case the police want to know, they can just go
Oh.
to a company and say, hand over Paul Arthur's or John Carpay's communications from the last 6 months, hand over the records that will reveal every text they sent, every phone call that they made, where they were located geographically, how often they were texting and phoning people. This is the data, and then you have subscriber data, which is basically, uh, if my phone is with Rogers or with TELUS,
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that they have to turn over to government who are your subscribers, and they can look for my name on the list.
Wow.
And doing this without a warrant, and that's the significance of it. Police have always had the ability to go to court and get a warrant. So
Yeah.
if they think that Paul Arthur or John Carpay has
Yeah.
committed a crime or is
Yeah.
currently committing a crime, they can go to court, they can get a search warrant, and then they can get the info they need. This legislation makes it a lot easier for police to get a warrant.
So
In
I
some
guess
cases,
the argument must be then coming from, I guess, police departments or the government. I'm not sure, or both, or CSIS. Hey, we need this information sometimes really quick because there's bad guys out there doing, bad stuff, and so we need to catch them as quickly as possible. If we have to wait for a warrant, then we'll miss the boat and we won't get the bad guys. Is that the deal there, or?
That's that's the argument, and it's a very powerful argument. The same argument was used in the 1970s and 1980s when some people said, "Why don't we allow police to listen in on every phone call because that'll really help to fight crime?" And there's a kernel of truth in that. I suppose if the
Hmm.
police could listen in on every phone call, maybe their job would be easier to catch. Some terrorists
Yeah.
or people doing running child prostitution rings and all kinds of horrible stuff. However, here's the problem: human nature is a mixture of good and evil, and power tends to corrupt. Absolute power
Mm.
corrupts absolutely. What happens when police have this unlimited access into our private lives? You get into a police state and you no longer have privacy. You can't communicate
Yeah.
freely
Yeah.
with your friend, your spouse, if
Hmm.
you think or if you know that somebody else might be listening. You're going to completely change what you say and how you say it
So you'd
because
want to
there's a third
amend.
party is listening in on it.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, you'd be very hesitant to say what you'd normally say. I mean, Big Brother's listening, right? And keeping track, keeping the records. So you'd want to change the legislation there that basically you're going to have to get a warrant first, right? There has to be some limits to this.
Yeah, no, again, this is like a step by step by step process. I'm not suggesting that police now have the power to do whatever they want without a warrant. Uh, but that's the direction that we're slowly heading in. For example, in these laws, they have lowered the standard that police need to meet in order to
Oh,
get a
okay.
warrant. And it used to be reasonable and probable grounds to believe that a crime has been committed. Now it's reasonable grounds to suspect that a crime has been committed. And that's a lot lower. There are a lot of things that I suspect, but if you say,
Hmm.
"Well, do you really believe it?" I said, "Well, no, I don't believe it. I just suspect it." Right? So it's a lower standard. If
Yeah.
police can get a warrant based on what they suspect, it makes it a lot easier to get a warrant than if police have to swear an affidavit saying that they
Hmm.
believe that somebody's committing a crime, not just
Okay.
suspect.
All right. And then you've got one here on amending the proceeds of crime. This has to do with money laundering and terrorist financing. And again, we're all, we don't want to see that kind of thing prosper in Canada. So what's the threat to privacy here under this particular act?
So financial transactions, for example, let's say you're traveling to a foreign country and you're going to Mexico and you're going to be there a while with the whole family. So you want 3,000 Canadian dollars worth of Mexican pesos.
Hmm.
If you uh, if you do currency in a currency exchange in an amount higher than 3,000 Canadian dollars, the currency exchange place has to take down your name and address.
Oh.
Now, there's legal requirements, and so we have this financial center. It's called FinTrack, and
Yep.
it records all major financial transactions. Now, the problem there is that they are not required, and it's only like 1% of 1% of 1% that eventually lead to an investigation, right? So
Hmm.
the government's collecting a lot of financial information about us. We should amend that legislation to force that center, once, if it hasn't resulted in an investigation within, let's say, 6 months of the information being collected, that they're required to delete the information. So
Mm.
that's one
So
of
right now
our,
they keep it forever, basically.
well, maybe they're deleting it voluntarily, but there's no requirement in the law that they have to
Mm.
delete the information about,
Yeah.
some, uh, so there's an example. The more serious one is that currently border officials have the right to search your cell phone. And if you refuse to put in your PIN
Wow.
number and show them what's on your phone, they can confiscate the phone. And this
Yeah,
needs to
I
be
don't.
changed
I man,
because
that really bothers me. Yeah, I think that would bother most Canadians, wouldn't it? I mean, you've got your
it's
life
your
on your
whole
phone now,
life.
right?
It's your private personal communications with your spouse or your girlfriend, boyfriend, children, friends. It's your internet searches are on there. It's videos that you look at. It's things, private things, like whether you, I don't know, are taking a martial arts class. Like, it's just nobody's business, right? What church you attend, everything is on your cell phone. For most people, everything's on
Yeah,
your cell phone.
yeah. So
So when
my
you're
God,
coming
my
back into Canada, they
yeah.
can they can say, I want to search your phone. They don't require a warrant.
I don't understand what the reason would be for that. How is this
Safety and
going to?
security. Safety
Wow.
and security. That's always, we got to keep you safe from the bad guys. Right. And of course, that's true. There's a kernel of truth. Of course, government should take appropriate measures to keep us safe from the bad guys. But here again,
Hmm.
if they suspect that somebody named Mark Smith has child pornography on his phone, the police can go to court. They can say, here's our information. We want to search his cell phone. So the next time, and then they can give that to the border security. The next time that Mark Smith leaves Canada, when he's
Hmm.
coming back in, there's a search warrant is already in place. And they can say, oh, you're Mark Smith? Yes. We want to see your cell phone. And we've got a
Hmm.
warrant.
Yeah.
Or you want to see your computer and we have a warrant.
Yeah. Just randomly hand over your phone, dude, or we'll take it away. That sounds like a police state, not like Canada.
This is why, well, I hope people will read the report. It's on our website.
Yeah.
It's written in plain English. I mean, we
Okay.
had input from lawyers on it, of course, but it's written in layman's language to,
Hmm.
like, what are some of the current bills that have already been around for a while, and what are some of these new bills, and the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing, and
Yep.
the first step is to be informed.
Yeah, and then yeah, I guess we're gonna have to actually talk to our lawmakers or members of parliament and the justice minister, etc. Get on the horn. So again, the website jccf.ca. You can see the report there. Privacy roadmap, halting Canada's surveillance state. All right, yeah, do check it out. Tell your friends about that too. You talk about the need to reject Bill C-22. You mentioned it earlier, the Lawful Access Act, or the Awful Access Act, perhaps, because I think that this was passed, wasn't it? And it's, I think, now in the Senate. Am I right on that, or?
Yes, unfortunately, it was rushed through the House of Commons quite quickly with the
Okay.
government's new manufactured majority. They're able to do that more quickly. And so it's now before the Senate. And this is the legislation that the company Signal has said, if this bill passes, they're pulling out of Canada because they can no longer guarantee privacy and confidentiality for their own customers if this bill passes. And these are companies that they rarely. I've never heard of Signal ever making a public statement about legislation. These are not politically active companies that have got all kinds of opinions on all kinds of issues. Because if that was the case, you could say, okay, well, they're piping up again. This is a company that, as far as I know, they've never spoken publicly about any piece of Canadian legislation. They mind their own business and they run their private confidential messaging and phone systems for customers. So they've spoken out and said that this Lawful Access Act, which I like the Awful Access Act. I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, this is legislation that is going to permit the federal government to order these companies to turn over subscriber data and to turn over data about who we phoned and texted in the past 6 months.
Okay, yeah. So this ties in with C8. It's basically the next step on that, I suppose. And C34, you also mentioned there, but this is a pretty serious bill here. I think it's the Safe Social Media Act. This, as I understand it, would require actually all Canadian, social media users. We'd have to verify our age, our identity, because we want to protect 16 and under, I guess, or under 16, our kids from accessing, some of the garbage that's out there on the internet. So, yeah, we don't want our kids watching porn, all that kind of stuff, right? So, yeah, there's nasty stuff out there, but that brings with it a whole bunch of privacy concerns, doesn't it, if we have to actually all verify our identity?
Australia passed similar legislation in December 2025 the goal was to make it illegal and impossible for kids under 16 to access social media. 3 months after this law was in force, there was a government official issued a formal progress report on, how are things going with the new legislation. And 2/3 of teens were still accessing social media by borrowing, by fake ID or borrowing ID from their parents, older brother, sister, friend, whatever. Now, the challenge now is that what's likely to be the next step in Australia is they're going to say, well, we need reliable ways of confirming age. So in order to go onto Facebook or X or anything else, you have to provide a facial recognition scan, or you have to provide government issued digital ID to prove that you're over 18. That's the problem with it. I mean, it was good intentions, I suppose, although really it's up to parents to make sure that their kids are not accessing bad stuff on social media or the rest of the internet for that matter.
I think you bring up a profound point right there. Again, I think we want the government to do our job sometimes as parents. Let's just trust the government to legislate this. But ballpark, I've got the final say over my kids, and I'm responsible for what they're seeing on the internet. I've got to put down some guidelines. That involves some time and effort, but we've got to do it. It's worth it, isn't it?
Well, nature abhors a vacuum, and there's a lot of good parents that are installing proper safeguards. There's this anti-pornography software. There's ways to shut down. You can shut down your child's computer or cell phone at 10 p.m. or say, well, you can't have your computer in your bedroom by yourself. There's all kinds of things. Unfortunately, a lot of parents have dropped the ball.
Yeah.
And now government comes in as the knight in shining armor, riding on a white horse, saying, we're going to protect your kids. But the danger again is that this is a pathway to forcing every Canadian to be submitting to facial scans or potentially central government digital ID, government issued digital ID. Well, once you have that, then government knows every single time that you go on social media, and it's just this massive, you give all this private information to government. Do you really think that they'll never abuse it?
Just watch Minority Report, the Tom Cruise movie from I guess a couple of decades old already, but man, that's happening now, it seems. There's facial ID recognition used in many countries. So it's kind of a scary thing. This particular bill as well, C-34, if I understand correctly, this is also basically putting it putting things onto the private companies, right? Whether it's AI chatbots or social media companies, that they're supposed to monitor, social media interaction. Okay, so if there's hateful content being disseminated, then they make a judgment call on it and report it to the authorities. And if they don't, there's huge fines. So I'm thinking that's pretty likely they're going to err on the side of let's not pay the big fine and we'll tell them whatever they want to hear.
Yeah. So Bill C-34 would create a very powerful new federal government authority called the Digital Safety Commission, and that can issue fines up to $10 million or 3% of
Wow.
your total global annual revenues, which for a company like Facebook is, or
Yeah.
Instagram, Meta, what have you. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
those are huge amounts of money. So they are going to be incentivized. They're going to have the incentive to take down what they think might be harmful or what is hateful. Sorry,
Yeah.
and again, this sounds nice. Don't you agree that we want to get rid of misinformation, disinformation, hate, harmful content?
But that becomes
Yes,
very subjective, doesn't it? Yeah.
yes, but not if it means that I lose my right to free speech, because now you're going to have
Yeah.
these overly cautious private companies
Mm-hmm.
that they don't want to pay a $10 million fine, and they're going to be censoring left, right, and center. They're going to be censoring all kinds of stuff. Oh, because this might be hateful, might be harmful, might be misinformation.
Yeah.
It,
I
it,
mean,
it's just a complete assault on free speech.
it is. Because if you think that through, I think the government is hesitant because legally, can they actually outright ban free speech? No, probably not at this point. But if they have this threat of huge fines, then essentially the private social media companies are doing the government's dirty work, right?
Yeah, and this is so far removed, so different from the existing criminal code prohibitions on the willful promotion of hatred against an identifiable group in a public place. We've had these laws on the books for decades, and there's strong arguments for repealing them. There's arguments for keeping them on the books, but here's the point: those are very narrowly defined. You cannot willfully, in public, even in private conversations, you could willfully promote hatred against an identifiable group. But so the current laws is you cannot publicly, say on a website or on a street corner, you cannot publicly promote hatred against a group based on its race,
Mm-hmm.
religion, sexual orientation, gender
Right.
identity, gender expression. Now, that's a pretty high threshold. We seem to get about one hate speech prosecution every 5 or 10 years in Canada that I'm aware of, unless there's a whole bunch under the radar, and these are usually their high profile cases. This is totally different. This is fomenting hatred uh, on social media, and the social media companies have to, and it's not even only against an identifiable group based on their race or religion. This is fomenting hatred against anybody. That's so vague.
Wow. That's just so subjective. Yeah, I mean, have at her, right? If you don't like somebody, launch a complaint. I don't know. Get to the human rights tribunals. But this is potentially, like, I guess, a criminal act?
No, no, Safe Social Media Act does not have new
Okay.
criminal
Okay.
provisions, but it gets the private companies to do the government's dirty work
Yeah,
of
yeah.
censorship, because the
Mm-hmm.
private companies are terrified of getting a fine. So anything that might be hateful or harmful, they're going to censor it. This is analogous to government enforcing its lockdown measures and vaccine mandates. They got the restaurants and the movie theaters and the gyms to do the government's dirty work of saying, well, show me your papers to prove that you've been injected, and otherwise you can't come into this restaurant, you
Mm-hmm.
can't go to the
Mm-hmm.
gym,
Mm-hmm.
you can't go to the movie theater.
Yep. Yep.
The government itself didn't have to do much, because any non-compliance, the government would impose a massive fine. So every restaurant, gym,
Yeah.
movie theater, bowling alley, they all did the government's dirty work to avoid getting a massive fine. And so this is now what we're seeing with the social media, with the Safe Social Media Act.
Yeah, it's an end run essentially, kind of ingenious in one sense by the government, but frankly we need to speak up while we still can. Yeah, your thoughts here. What are our options for the viewers here? How do we stand up to try to bring about change to this?
One option on the Justice Centre website is write a letter to your member of parliament. And if you go to www.jccf.ca, so Justice Centre Constitutional Freedoms, jccf.ca, and there's a ready to send. You type in your name and email address, and we tell you who your MP is if you don't know,
Okay.
or your postal code rather. So we get the postal code. So you're sending electronic letter to your own member of parliament, and you use our website to do it. And it's a short, here's what's bad about Bill C-34, the Safe Social Media Act, and here's why you should vote against it. And so that's a very practical tool that we have on our website.
And again, as you point out, information is key as well. So I want to steer people to your website, jccf.ca. And again, check out this report here, Privacy Roadmap. And the other thing I think you would agree as well with, John, is in our coffee shop conversations, at the water cooler at work, we need to have these conversations. I think a lot of Canadians aren't actually aware of how, to the degree our privacy is being threatened currently. I'm out of time. Got to leave it there. Thank you so much, John, for your time today.
Thank you for having me on your show.
You bet. John Carpay with the jccf.ca. Thank you so much again, WizeUp.ca. Tell your friends, hit subscribe.